let you get out of that now. So since you have the last name Watkins, we got to be cousins. All right. So so today we have a really interesting topic we're going to hit in the book club. We're going to jump into chapter 4 of Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson. And I talked to Dr. Anderson earlier this week. He's going to come on my podcast probably later in the week. I told him that he wanted to come on, I think tomorrow, and I said, we're taking our son to college, and he understood. So I think maybe this weekend or early next week he'll be back, and just give you a heads up on that. And also I'm going to incorporate Dr. Anderson. I'll try to get him to incorporate into the convention. He cannot travel because he's not a 25-year-old anymore. And honestly, I believe out of respect for the elders, we should create scenarios where we're propping them up, that we're boosting them up, that we have their back so they don't have to get out here and grind like they're 35 years old. So I told Dr. Anderson, I said, I will talk to the audio visual team and do all I can to bring you in to the ABNC, to the convention, so that people can hear from you, because he's the godfather. He is the GOAT. He is he is the modern day Marcus Garvey. And I encourage all of you, I hope you'll give him his flowers while he's here. I don't want to just start celebrating him after it's over, right? Hopefully he'll live another 100 years, but you know what I mean. But I know Dr. Anderson sends his best, and I got his blessing before I even did a book club. I said, look, I don't want to do this book club without you saying that it's okay, and he's completely okay, because Dr. Anderson he wants he wants the Powernomics philosophy to be incorporated into every family in America. So what does that mean? That means that we must be the school system. We have to be the school system. We can't sit around and say, well, gosh, I wish white people would educate our kids better. That's not their job. Just like it's not your job to educate their kids. It's our job to educate our own, and that's what we can do. That's what we call the Black Core of Three. The Black Core of Three is that we believe Black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support Black businesses. Stop waiting for other people to do for you what you can do for yourself. You are not a child. They are not sitting around saying, well, gosh, we'd love to have a mall in our neighborhood, but we're waiting on Black people to build it. Oh, my little Asian baby can't learn because Black people won't build a school to educate my Asian baby. No, they don't do that. They don't do that. They ain't waiting for you. They ain't waiting for you. Asian people are not waiting for you. Arab people are not waiting for you. Latino people are not waiting for you. White people are not waiting for you. But why are you waiting for them? Why are you waiting for them to come in and do things for you that they're not waiting for you to come and do for them? Right. So I just want you to kind of think about that. And I don't want you to put yourself in that disabled category or that childlike category. You are not children. You are grown-ups, and we can do grown-up stuff. So with that being said, let me jump into this. Those of you who are listening online, this is the Dr. Boyce Book Club. You can actually get all the archives of all the lectures we've done. We do this lecture every Wednesday at 8:30. The agreement is if you come live, you can see the lecture for free. But if you want the archives, which I think we're up to about 7 or 8 lectures now, every one of them has been about an hour to an hour and a half of deep analysis of Dr. Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth. If you want the archives, you can go to the drboycebookclub.com. That's the drboycebookclub.com. If you want to catch the free live lecture, which actually you guys are going to need this URL if you're listening online, because I'm actually going to have to shut this feed down because my phone is going to die. But you can go to blackkeystogreatness.com. That gives you free access to my life class as well as access to the book club. And so let me just go ahead and get started right now. And I'm going to read chapter 4. Why whites chose to enslave blacks. This is a question we don't think about much because we just assume slavery happened and it was supposed to happen the way that it happened, and that there's no other possible narrative. What people don't know is that when they were looking for people to exploit, they went down the list. They looked at different groups, and they had the best weapons, and they said we could enslave the Native Americans, or we could enslave the Asians, we could enslave other white people. They didn't care. That capitalist greed, that European hostility. They kind of, if you look at the history of Europe, you'll see the Europeans have done horrible things to other Europeans. Remember, Hitler, went and exterminated 6 million people from the Jewish community, and that was after the other countries were slaughtering Germans, right? So people don't talk about the Holocaust before the Holocaust before the Holocaust. They don't understand that Hitler's anger was driven because of the fact that he was, to the eyes of the people that supported him. I'm not justifying anything that he says or anything he does, but he was, in their minds, for his supporters, he was kind of like their Malcolm X in a way, where he was talking about all the atrocities being done to German people. that were in occupied lands, where pieces of Germany have been chopped off after World War One. They humiliated Germany. They destroyed the country economically. They took over various territories, and the people that lived there were being slaughtered by the thousands. So Hitler was kind of just a guy. It's almost like when you talk about a gang culture, right? Like somebody says, you say, well, why would you go and kill that man's whole family? And they say, well, it's because he killed my homie and his family, right? So in Europe, this is my point. In Europe, they've always they've been having gangster shit. Like this goes back over 1,000 years. It's not that they just did this to black people. They didn't just say, well, we're gonna go do these horrible things to black people. These were just some of these people were just horrible people. Like they were, the dark ages fighting over scarce resources. They were slaughtering each other like crazy. They would go to France and just slaughter 1,000 French people, and then the French would go to somewhere else and slaughter people there. And so when you got to other parts of the world where they didn't have the where they didn't have the weapons and things like that, they pretty much said, okay, here's Africa, this continent that has all these resources, and including the human beings. But then we also got the gold and everything else. Any resource that you want is in Africa, right? Africa is the richest continent in the world. It has the most resources. They pretty much chopped Africa up and said, you take this part, you take that part, you take that part, and this is how we're all going to eat. And we don't care about these people. All right. So let's go. Now I know Charles Knox says you can't compare Hitler to Malcolm X. I'm not saying I'm comparing Hitler to Malcolm X. I'm saying that for the people in Germany, that's what he represented. He represented the man, in their view, who was going to bring their country back to prominence. Doesn't mean he was a good guy. I'm not saying he was a good guy. But one of the interesting things, I watched a whole documentary that you guys may want to watch. It was on YouTube. I don't like the propaganda, right? I don't like media telling me what I'm supposed to think about a situation or about a person. I get information from all sources. So one of the things that got my attention was Jesse Owens when they asked him about his interaction with Hitler in Germany. They had the Berlin Olympics, and Hitler. They said Hitler was rude and mean and mad because Jesse beat all his Aryan white supremacist athletes. Jesse Owens said that is not true. He said that was not what happened. He said, check this out. Pay attention now. He said, Hitler treated me with respect. He shook my hand. He sent me a congratulations note to my room afterward. Maybe he didn't like me, but he didn't act rude toward me. He said, check this out. Pay attention now. He said it was my own president who would not meet with me. He said the president of the United States was the one who said, I don't want to meet with that Negro. Right. And so Jesse Owens, he said this in his book. He went to the New York Times, a reporter, and he said, why won't you tell the truth about what really happened in Germany? And check this out. Do you know what the guy said? The guy said, if I report the truth, then they're going to fire me from the New York Times, right? Because they had an agenda. Their agenda was, we need things painted in a certain way. And now I'm not sitting here trying to be a deny. I'm not even going to go into the whole Germany and Nazi conversation, because that's not my conversation. That's not my story. But the part that is our story is that there are people that manipulate the media to control what you think. And you know what I'm talking about. We've discussed this before. And that's why the control of Black-owned media is so incredibly important for us, because the intelligent Jewish people who did take over big chunks of the media, they were smart, because they said, we're going to control our own message, our own narrative, our own image before anybody else does. But what also happened is they got the chance to control the image and the messages about other people. Okay. So the documentary I watched, I got to look it up. I think it was called something like Adolf Hitler, The Greatest Story Never Told. And I was looking for the bias. I was looking for the agenda the whole time. I have spidey senses. And I felt like they were just giving facts. So, for example, when they got around to the Holocaust, they didn't deny it. They didn't deny that some atrocities were committed during World War II at all, right? But they also said, they put it into context. They said over in Russia, Joseph Stalin killed 15, 20 million people in his country and around the world. They also said America, just like what we're doing in Afghanistan right now, America pretends like they are always the good guy. America pretends like human rights violations only occur overseas. America pretends like everybody else has a problem, but they don't. And they said, look at the way they treat Black people in America. This is what these white folks said that made this documentary. They said they showed images of the lynchings and Black folks being burned alive, being hanged from trees at family picnics and stuff like that. And they said also that you guys may not know this, but I think 5 or 6 of your American presidents that you're taught to idolize, including guys like Woodrow Wilson, were members of the KKK at one point. They were all members of the Klan. And they don't teach you this in school. Why? Well, because we're crazy enough to let those folks educate us. That's why I've told you all that your first step toward liberation is you must recontrol your education. You're like we're all part of like a military, and in a military, you go in and you pick certain territory and you occupy that territory. Well, we got to go occupy the minds of our children. We must secure the building when it comes to the minds of our kids. So B1 children, in my view, should be educated first and foremost by B1 parents. And then if you want to send your kid to school to give them a little bit extra, you can. But their dominant influence must be you. It cannot be the system, and it cannot be the rappers, because they're the ones who will educate your child to self-destruction, and that is a fact. That is everywhere. So let me keep going. Do me a favor. If you're listening online, I'm going to shut this off in a minute. If you want to come to the book club, you can join live for free at blackkeystogreatness.com. The URL is right there on the screen. Write that down, because that's where you can go if you want to finish up with the book club. So let me read. This is on page Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson, page 65. So we worked up through 65 pages. And the chapter 4 says, Why Whites Chose to Enslave Blacks. The impact of Black enslavement remains clearly visible in the protracted living conditions in Black communities across the nation. As discussed later in chapter 6, the financial impact was and continues to be unbelievably beneficial to whites and others around the world. Over the years, social scientists have written volumes of material depicting slavery and its impact on both Black and white Americans. They have described in minute detail Blacks' struggles and the failures of race relations. What they have neglected to answer is the core question: why were Blacks, above all other population groups, singled out for and successfully kept in slavery for such a protracted period of time? Since Black enslavement was such a unique experience, Black Americans need to thoroughly understand why they were chosen to serve as slaves. By clearly understanding the strategies and decisions whites and others have used to conquer them and use them as fodder for domestic and global economies, Blacks will be better able to prevent such abuse from ever happening to them again. In addition, Blacks will be able to better articulate why white America should never again minimize the impact of Black enslavement and Jim Crowism, and never again equate other so-called minority grievances with the afflictions that have been heaped upon Blacks. So what he's basically saying is stop comparing yourself to other people and stop letting other people compare themselves to you. I'm sorry. I apologize to those who have a certain sexual preference that they feel is not accepted, but you ain't Black. That ain't the same as being Black. So just stop it. That's what you do. That's you. We love everybody. We ain't got nothing against what you do in the bedroom or who you decide to love, but that ain't our struggle. That's not the same struggle as the one that we had. I'm sorry. Stop equating. Stop equating people from south of the border to be equivalent to Blacks. There is no such thing as a Black Hispanic alliance. There is not, because many Hispanics are more racist than white people in America. If you ever want to see racism, go down to Colombia, where they have segregation. They have half the city will be white, the other half will be Black. Go down to go down to Brazil, where they put all Black people in certain areas, and they don't even show you images of dark-skinned Brazilians in the media, right? So when they come up from south of the border, we ain't even talk about the Cubans. When they come up from south of the border from other countries, they ain't coming over here to align with you. They're not in your struggle. They're not connected with you in any way. They're like, oh, okay, so these are we knew we had Negroes like this back at home, and we ignored them back there too. We just here to align with other white people who happen to speak English. We speak Spanish, I speak English, but we both know we're white. So let's stop letting people compare their experience to our experience. There is a uniqueness in what you went through. Nobody else has gone through what you've gone through. Any comparisons, in my view, are null and void. Let's see here. The practice of human enslavement is a phenomenon of mankind that extends back to prehistoric times. However, the enslavement of Black people in America has been so totally unique in its role, scope, and consequences that historians, politicians, and social scientists have referred to American slavery as a peculiar institution. That means like, wow, this was odd. This was strange. That's peculiar. Wow, they really rewrote the playbook when it came to Black people in America. This is not something we've ever seen before. These observers of human behavior consider Black enslavement peculiar because it defied all accepted religious precepts and secular standards of normative behavior. It did not comply with traditional justifications for human enslavement. Moreover, Black slavery did not end in the traditional manner. So basically, you were enslaved by savages. You were enslaved by some godless sons of bitches that didn't respect anything. It's almost like when you think about Chicago. One thing Chicago lost was when they did the war on drugs and they started locking up all the Black men. When they did our Holocaust, when Joe Biden and Bill Clinton and the others started locking up all the Black men, one thing that they did was they used RICO laws to lock up all the gang leaders. And what people didn't understand is that the gang leaders, as much of a challenge as it might have been to deal with some of the negative consequences of gang behavior, gang activity when it goes bad, gang leaders maintained order. Gang leaders maintain structure. Leaders have codes that they have to live by. That's what every gang lives by. Whether you're talking about the police force, you're talking about a corporation. Apple is an economic gang. They're gang affiliated. They wear similar colors. They speak similar language. They have similar goals. Everybody knows their job. There's a hierarchy, right? So gangs are everywhere. Your family is kind of like a gang. Anybody ever get in a fight with somebody that had like 8 brothers and sisters? You don't mess with that kid that's got 8 brothers and sisters that are ready to fight. That kid never gets beat up because they're part of a gang, right? So in Chicago, you had gangs that had order and structure because they had leaders that maintained that order and that structure, maintained that hierarchy. Even now, I'll talk to some young guys who are in the economic space, and they'll give me a certain deference to myself and Dr. Anderson. They'll say, "You're the OG." Right? That's a sign of order and respect, and I respect and appreciate that. Right? Now, here's the problem: when they locked up all the gang leaders, a lot of that order and structure went out the window. You had a bunch of wild, crazy young kids that didn't respect anything. They didn't care about if they wanted to kill you. They didn't care if they came to your grandma's church and shot up the church. They will come to the funeral and kill everybody at the funeral. They didn't care if your little sister was walking home from school. They didn't feel like, well, women and children shouldn't be included in all this because they didn't have the experience or the wisdom to know that about what appropriate boundaries need to be, and that appropriate boundaries are good for everybody, right? Where you can make certain assumptions in terms of behavior, right? And so effectively, when I think about the way the Europeans did slavery, I think about that kind of almost animalistic, savage, chaotic mindset where you respect nothing. You don't respect a family. You yank a child out of a mother's arms and think nothing of it. You didn't respect religion because you didn't care if what happened after you die. You're not thinking about heaven or hell. You're just getting what you can while you're on this earth. You're not respecting anything at all. You're not respecting decency toward human beings, none of that, right? So American slavery was different from any form of slavery that had ever existed that anybody knows about. So you were dealing with some savages, absolute savages. These observers of human behavior considered Black enslavement peculiar because it defied all religious precepts, etc. It did not comply with traditional justifications of human enslavement. The white slaveholders did not voluntarily free Blacks. So this is another thing. There was no point where you were emancipated. I don't know if y'all know that, but slavery ain't over. In prison, slavery is still legal, according to the Constitution. This is not me speculating. This is in the Constitution. There is a clause that says you can be a slave if you are convicted of a crime. In this country, certain folks control the laws. They can change the law to make anybody a criminal, which means that they therefore can put you back into slavery. So the white slaveholders did not voluntarily free Blacks, nor did the slaves successfully rise up to revolt to free themselves. It took a 4-year civil war, costing nearly 500,000 lives, with whites fighting against other whites, and still the Southern whites' economic and psychological dependence on Black people could not be totally broken. No other human enslavement has engendered such intense emotional attachments, conflicts, hatreds, and wealth for as many nations as did Black enslavement. Was there something that was uniquely different about Black people that caused nearly the entire world to support and profit from their enslavement? The answer to this question is critical towards helping Blacks to better understand the dynamics of slavery and its impact on current and future events. If Blacks were enslaved simply because of skin color, then slavery was beyond the control of Blacks. On the other hand, if weaknesses or other conditions made Blacks targets, then Blacks must study those conditions and ensure that they are never again so vulnerable, right? So what he's basically saying is there's a chance that maybe they didn't pick you just because you were Black, right? Maybe they picked you because you were an easy target, right? Like a pimp. A pimp is not going to walk up on any young lady that he sees. If he sees certain things in a woman, he can smell weakness, right? So he looks for that young lady that's insecure. Maybe she's struggling financially. Maybe she isn't that smart, right? Maybe her confidence and self-esteem isn't that high because her daddy was never there for her. That's what the pimp looks for. He doesn't look for that young, confident, capable woman who's got her own money and knows how to get what she wants and has standards, right? That's why what we do with our daughters matters so much. When I talk to my daughters, I'm talking to them in a way where basically in the back of my mind, I'm old school. I'm thinking, I need to really prepare you so that you don't get pimped and played by some guy that's trying to manipulate you, right? Because we already know what happens when little girls fall in love. They, oh my God, I love Todd. He's so wonderful. Oh, Tyrone is going to take care of me and the baby forever. And then next thing you know, Tyrone's gone, right? So we talk about that. We talk about setting standards so that they don't become easy targets for other people. And the same thing is true for the son, except in a different conversation, right? So here's what Dr. Anderson says about why blacks chose to enslave whites. And everybody who's listening online, I want to let you know that in 1 second, I'm going to cut this off, and you can go to blackkeystogreatness.com to join the book club for free if you're interested. So feel free to go to blackkeystogreatness.com if you'd like to join the book club for free. Just sign up anyway. Even if you don't come to the book club tonight, that's fine. And if you want the archives of the book club meeting, some of you have asked me about the archives. There is a fee attached to that because in the Black Business School, we have to generate revenue. We want to add value for you. Hopefully you'll add value for us so that we can go out here and get things done. And we show you what we're doing. Like this convention is going to cost us probably about $100,000. We're pulling this off. We're getting it done. It's happening no matter what. And we would love for you to attend. Your attendance is beneficial. If you can help us by reaching out and letting others know that you're coming there. We encourage you to have investment club meetings there. We encourage you to have family reunions there. We encourage you to bring your children, bring your baby mama, baby daddy. We ain't judging. Bring your spouse. Come here, meet the woman that you might want to be your spouse, right? Or the man you might want to, right? All of that. We would love for you to join us. It's going to be at the end of October 29th through November 1st in Orlando. The resort is beautiful. There's 9 restaurants, and we're going to cover all kinds of stuff from pandemic politics, like stuff about the vaccine and all that stuff, as well as everything from hip hop to how to start a business to real estate to speed dating, like a spades tournament. I think somebody threw in a spades tournament today. So it's really designed to be a lot of fun. So I hope you guys will join us. You can go to allblacknationalconvention.com if you're interested in going. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. The super early bird tickets are on sale right now. All right, so let me keep going. Historically, human enslavement, like other human activities, was purposeful. In both ancient and modern enslavement, humans were rarely randomly enslaved. The enslaver or master normally enslaved individuals or groups as a result of a personal debt, religious differences, or as imprisonment stemming from war. Besides being a form of social punishment, slavery was enforced to comfort the master and provide free labor. Since ancient times, wars and religious conflicts have followed mankind's development and produced a constant flow of slaves and masters. Arabs enslaved the Mongolians, who in turn enslaved the Chinese and the Russians. The Hebrews enslaved and were enslaved by the Egyptians. Victorious Roman and Greek armies conquered the Mediterranean area and made slaves of nations and men, regardless of race, ethnicity, or color. Human enslavement became so common that even the poorest people became slave masters. The commonness of human enslavement caused the Roman society and the Catholic Church to establish policies and laws to provide parameters for the practice of bonding human beings. In other words, they created a code. They said, okay, if we're going to do this stuff, we got to be on code. We have to make sure that you get what you want without unduly harming other people, right? Now, slavery is still slavery. It's a problem, but at least there was a code. So pay attention now. This is where eventually we're going to get back to eventually get around to black people. It said, so under the old Roman slave laws, slavery was accepted as a temporary condition that could befall any person, kind of like what prison is right now, I would say. Therefore, Roman laws focused on protecting the slave's humanity and basic rights during the temporary enslavement. So protecting the humanity of the slave. So give me a yes or no. Let's consciously process this for a moment. Do you feel that the humanity of black people was preserved during slavery? Give me a yes or no. Did they go out of their way? Did the slave masters go out of their way to preserve and protect the humanity of black people when we were enslaved? The answer is absolutely, completely, 100%, abundantly, clearly, no. Right? So effectively, there was a change. There was a shift in the protocol, and I'm curious. I've read the book, but I'm rereading it again. Part of the reason I'm doing the book club is because I wanted to force myself to go through the book in extreme detail, because this is probably the most important book, one of the most important books you'll read in this particular area, and that's why I think your children need to hear this too. So let me keep going. So therefore, Roman laws focused on protecting the slave's humanity and basic rights during the temporary enslavement. The Catholic Church intervened on behalf of slaves to ensure that they maintained rights such as the right to purchase freedom, protect their property, testify in court, and marry. So the Catholic Church stepped in on behalf of slaves to protect their right to buy their freedom, protect their property, testify in court, and marry. Again, kind of like a corporate slave a little bit, right? Like if we talk all the time about getting off the corporate plantation. If you want to get off the corporate plantation, you just got to buy your freedom. So one of the goals in the Black business schools, we say, how do we help folks buy their freedom? And right now, what's going on in America after the pandemic is you're having something called the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation. I talked about it today on Dr. Boyce TV, where basically millions of people are quitting their jobs. So millions of people are figuring out a way to purchase their freedom. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I've been saying that for many years. Fortunately, the pandemic kind of pushed the issue. So this is our opportunity to get ahead. Okay. So don't waste the crisis. Use this as an opportunity to build better. And when you come back stronger. All right. So due to the Catholic Church's strong influence in Latin American societies, some slaves were able to win their freedom in court with compensation from cruel slave masters. So the slave masters had to pay if they were overly cruel to the slaves. That's very interesting, right? The church intervened primarily to provide the slaves with escape hatches from slavery. The slave could work off or pay off his indebtedness to his creditors or assimilate into and become loyal to the society of his military captors. In addition, the slave could disavow his own religion and accept the religious affiliation of the master. In ancient times, the Catholic Church and Roman law gave the enslaved some options. Let me take a breath. Now we get to Black people. The uniqueness of Black slavery. America's enslavement of Blacks was unique in nearly every respect from previously known instances of human enslavement or serfdom. Some of the characteristics and factors surrounding American slavery are listed below. The sheer number of people enslaved was unprecedented. An estimated 15 to 60 million Blacks were captured in Africa for enslavement. More than 35 million died. 35 million of our people died en route to various ports, with approximately 15 million actually reaching the slave markets. So the majority of the slaves that were kidnapped did not make it across the sea. Ashe, in a moment of silence for the 35 million ancestors who died at the bottom of the sea, being taken to an unspeakable nightmare. And I think that it's very important for us, in order to really connect to our struggle, it's to really imagine being taken away right now, your children being taken away from the family, your daughter going to the playground and being taken away from the family forever and being taken out into the sea and dying in the sea. That's what I think about. I imagine my little girls or my son getting taken away and we can't find him. We don't know where the baby's at. I know I would never recover, and I know my wife wouldn't recover. I mean, it would be like a part of herself being taken away. So this happened with 35 million people that didn't even make it across the sea. I don't even know what's better, to make it across or not make it across. I can't. That's literally the worst choice a human being would ever have to make. And I encourage you to really process that a little bit, not to the point where you make yourself sad or too sad. I want you to process it because I need you to start feeling your own pain a little bit. Start empathizing with yourselves the way you empathize with everybody else. And what do I mean by that? Well, when they talk about what happened in World War II, that 6 million people that got slaughtered in World War II, which was a terrible atrocity, they make sure everybody understands what their community went through. They make sure that you never forget. Every child learns about that Holocaust. Every child, Jewish or not. Right? When they talk about 9/11, they haven't forgotten those 3,000 people that were killed in 9/11. RIP to them as well. They never forget that 600,000 people died during the pandemic. 600,000. So take 600,000, multiply it by 70, and that's what happened to you. Take the pandemic times 70, and that's what you went through. So I think it's very important that we understand that it has to be at the top of our priority list. So out of the 60 million that were kidnapped, 35 million died on the way. 15 million made it. It says the incompleteness of records makes it impossible to give an exact number, but Robert Kaczynski, a leading authority, estimated a minimum of 15 million were shipped. Hundreds of millions of the original enslaved Africans' offspring served as slaves or lived as subordinated, exploited human beings for hundreds of years. So they didn't so the slavery was in the DNA. It was, if you are the child of a slave, you're going to be a slave. People like George Washington, who your children are taught to idolize, passed laws to say that if you are an escaped slave, you can never be escaped. If they find you 30 years later, they can get you and deport you back to the plantation, right? So the humanity, there was no humanity for you. There was no Dream Act. There was no DACA law. There was nothing to protect you. That, you know, it was pretty terrible. Next, page 68, Black Labor, White Wealth. That's what we're reading. Dr. Claud Anderson's book. You can get a copy of the book, by the way, at powernomics.com. I encourage, please, everybody, go support this great man's work. Go to that site and buy all the books. Get them for your kids. Put them on your library. Make it standard. Any be one person in here. If I ever come to your house, if you want to impress me, show me that you got Dr. Anderson's books on your bookshelf, or send me, maybe take a selfie of all your Dr. Anderson books and put the hashtag B1 on it on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And I'm going to start sharing that hashtag. I'm going to start looking for that B1 hashtag, B in the number one, because I really think that we have to really develop the B1 nation and let people know that we're here, because you are the talented 10th. You are the best and the brightest. And I think you should be very proud of that. So let's keep going. The racist enslavement of blacks was introduced into the world at the same time that individual freedom for whites was blooming. Serfdom and servitude were disappearing in Europe. The Catholic and Protestant religions were undergoing reform and increased liberalization, and secular philosophies were embroiled in the intricacies of liberty, freedom, and equality of mankind. So they're talking all this, you know, freedom and liberty for everybody, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And while at the same time, they're thinking, okay, we still need our slaves, so let's go get these people in Africa. So you freed up a lot of white people. You helped a lot of white folks out. So some of these black folks would be proud of that, like you, because we love to save everybody. We love to brag about how we saved everybody, whether we saved the Democratic Party or somebody else. So there's some Negro somewhere who's very proud of the fact that his slavery helped free a white person. We can't help those people. So and secular philosophies were embroiled in the intricacies of liberty, freedom, and equality of mankind. European rulers responded by liberating and even financing the migrations of their subjects to the New World, including many of those who were then living in poor houses and prisons. Another point, black slavery was purely and simply racial and economic exploitation that caused economic revolutions and entrenched disparities between blacks and whites. Economically poor, non-industrialized nations, so these poor European nations like Spain, Portugal, Germany, and England, commercialized human exploitation and suffering for the primary purpose of looting gold, silver, and precious commodities in Africa and the New World. Old forms of mercantilism were converted into new capitalism. Banking, currency, and marketing reforms were created. Africa became a warren for the commercial hunting of strong ebony bodies. Subsequently, skin color became a sign of degradation for its wearer and a sign of wealth for its owner. Now, our friends, our beloved friends in the Moorish community will be very quick to tell you that being black wasn't always a bad thing. You know, they will tell you about what the Moors did in terms of what they taught Europeans and their savage, raggedy butts, right? But after this economic revolution occurred, where they said, hey, if we enslave these black people, we can have a come up off of this, right? We can have some money in our pocket. Suddenly blackness became associated with the right to degrade another person. That if you are black, I can do whatever I want to you. I can treat you any old kind of way. That has not changed, right? And so let's keep going. Let me keep reading here. And by the way, everybody who's online, I'm going to shut this feed off in 1 second. If you want to come on in, I'm going to put the URL back on the screen. You can go to blackkeystogreatness.com. If you'd like to join into the book club, you can join live for free. And also, I want to remind everybody that Friday, Julian Gordon is doing an excellent presentation on real estate, how to get into multifamily property. And that is at the emancipationequation.com. I'm going to put that URL on the screen too so you can see it. It's the emancipationequation.com. So feel free to join us. There you go. There's the URL. That's going to be on Friday. So we always have stuff going on in the Black Business School. And I hope you guys will feel free to check it out. Everything we do is cloaked in blackness, though. So if that's your thing, then we're for you. If that's not your thing, then we're not right for you. But we're all into black wealth and closing the racial wealth gap. That's pretty much all we care about. Okay. All right. So I'm going to shut this live feed off online.